Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Barbecue. I'm your host, Rashid Phillips, and This Week in Barbecue is the podcast that brings you the latest and greatest news, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent in the world of barbecue. I don't know much, but I do know one thing. News has never tasted so good. So let's get right into it with this week's news in barbecue. Our opening story starts off in a state that bleeds football and brisket, but there's a shining star that's bringing pork to the forefront. Marcus McNack of Crimson Creek Smokehouse, located in West Austin, is changing the way people perceive Texas barbecue. How's he go about doing that? He's not serving up the typical beef-focused menu. He's actually leaning heavily into pork. And nothing says this more so than the amazing sign that he has on the very front of his establishment. Smoked, spicy pig parts. If that doesn't scream, we sell pork, I don't know what does. Now, Marcus actually got this taste of pork and the bug for barbecue from his father when he used to tend fires. His job was to tend fires, add the coals and rubs, and just make sure that the flare-ups didn't get out of hand. The great and amazing thing I personally find about Marcus's barbecue is his rubs are salt-free. Now, this came from his father. His father served in Vietnam, and while in Vietnam, he was actually able to acquire a lot of knowledge for spices and rubs and was able to create a recipe that has been passed down and entrusted to Marcus, which, as flavorful as it is, contains no salt. There's a few ways to go about it, but Marcus isn't telling anyone, and that's the exact same way it should be. Now, though it is a pork-focused menu, that does not mean he's not serving any type of beef. He actually does an amazing overnight spiced, marinated tomahawk steak that gets slowly cooked on the rigs, he says, till about 122 degrees and is set aside to cool and rest up until it is ordered, where he finishes it off with a beautiful hard sear. This is known as reverse searing. Very great technique, wonderful way to cook a very thick cut of meat like the tomahawk steak. And his steak is actually served up with some clarified butter and duck fat. So there's a lot of flavor going on here. So Marcus, pork, beef, whatever it may be, the entire menu sounds delicious. They're serving up pork belly burn ends, pulled pork, and pork ribs 3 ways, along with that tomahawk steak. So you've got your pick of the litter to say of what you'd like to introduce your palate to. Marcus, keep up the amazing work. If you want to check out Marcus and more about him and his establishment, I'll have a link right there in the show notes. Let's keep it going. Next up, we've got some barbecue festival news. We mentioned this particular one in episode 2, but there's a little bit more details, so I wanted to fill you guys in. The Red Dirt Barbecue Music Festival tickets are actually available for purchase now. It's going to be bringing out a lot of heavy hitters. You have 2M Smokehouse, Brett's Backyard Barbecue, Harlem Road Texas Barbecue, which you may recognize Ara from. Ara was actually on season 2 of Barbecue Brawl. If you haven't checked it out, you should definitely tune in. He does a wonderful performance there and does a great job. I can only imagine the amazing things he's going to cook up for this festival. Now, the festival is not just for fun. It's got an amazing cause along with it. A portion of the proceeds are actually going to be set aside to help revitalize downtown Tyler, Texas, which is a great cause. It's always great when barbecue can help build the community that it's in. I've said it once, I've said it a million times. You guys are probably tired of me saying it by now, but barbecue is a very powerful tool, and I absolutely love when it's used to help motivate and inspire those around and the community. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it out to the festival, but if you can, I definitely suggest you do. I'll have more information and the link to purchase tickets in the show notes. Now, what if I told you if you won a barbecue competition, not only did you get the prize, the money, and the bragging rights, but you also got an opportunity to create the menu for your local airport, right? That's a little bit out there for a prize for a barbecue competition. I don't think anything like that's ever been done before. However, that's not stopping the amazing people over at the Kansas City International Airport. The winner of the Made for Kansas City barbecue competition is actually going to be able to create the menu for a brand new barbecue restaurant based within the airport and the terminal itself. That is one hell of bragging rights, so that if you win, your competitors, anytime they come to town, they've always got to walk past your menu, constantly reminding them of the dish that beat them. That's a heck of a prize, and I think it's really, really cool. I'm really interested to see how they go about doing this. Like I said, it's never been done before, but that doesn't mean it can't work. So stay tuned, as I'm sure as this story develops and builds over time, there will be more news to it, and I'll definitely keep you guys updated here on This Week in Barbecue. Now, sadly, This Week in Barbecue, we have lost two amazing figures in the world and in the barbecue community, and I just wanted to take this time to pay my respects to their families and send my condolences and allow you guys to be aware of the community loss as well. Larry Kimball of Homeboy Barbecue, who was loved by his friends, family, and his community, sadly passed away due to a heart attack. Everyone remembers him as being very friendly, always having a smile on his face, and always able to change anyone's day to make it a bit brighter. To the Kimball family, my deepest and most sincere condolences for your loss, and to your community's loss. It seems as though Larry has left quite an impression, and though he's no longer among you all and with us, it's though his presence and story and memories will live on along with his kind heart. Renee Ray Ramirez of Ray's Barbecue has passed away. Sadly, Ray took his own life at the tender age of 47. There has been a GoFundMe set up to help with his family in this trying times. This is very disheartening and saddening to hear, because the barbecue community is very focused on helping one another out, and I don't know Ray. I've never had an opportunity to meet him, but from all the stories I've read and the comment sections left on the post where the announcement was made, about 750, he's reached far and wide in the community, and even people as far as Warren G commented to leave and pay respects. This community is very supportive and giving, and if you or you know someone who's just going through a hard time and they need an ear, lend it. Reach out, talk to someone. Also, it is very important to check up on those around you. You never know what they're going through. You never know when the last conversation is going to be the last conversation. So keep that in mind and be good to one another. I will honor Ray and his memory by doing something his son did during the GoFundMe post by leaving the information for the suicide hotline. If you are needing help and you need someone to reach out to, you can call this hotline and communicate and talk with someone to express yourself. The world is always better and a bit brighter with you in it. All right, guys, now it is time to head on over to the hot and fast section of This Week in Barbecue, where I bring you some of the latest news in just sort of a little rapid fire succession that I think you should definitely know about. Barbecue joint Del Toro opens in Dallas, Fort Worth. They've got a huge beer garden and a huge backyard, so it's got ample room for many patrons. Make sure to check them out. 11 barbecue joints for various amount of pork-based dishes. That list has just been released. It's featuring various establishments such as Mission Barbecue, Dickey's Barbecue, and Fox's Barbecue. There's not to be confused with Fox Brothers Barbecue here in Atlanta, Georgia. The list continues on, and I'll have a link to that list in the show notes. And to finish off this hot and fast section, you can actually register right now for the Boomtown Border City Steak Cook-Off, up to $3,000 in prizes. So if you think you make the best steak around, definitely make sure you apply, because who can't use an extra $3,000 right now? All right, guys, now let's head into the Q&A portion of This Week in Barbecue. These are questions that you guys have submitted throughout the week, and I do my best to answer as many of them as I can in depth. So let's get the ball rolling. First up, we've got a question from Chris Collin. He asks, can I smoke chicken without a grill or smoker? Not really. I mean, if you have an oven, you can make an amazing roasted chicken. Part of it being smoked chicken is having a grill or a smoker. Of course, you can use liquid smoke in certain cases, but if you don't have one of those rigs at home, or you live in an apartment, you can go to your local park and get creative. They typically have grills out there that you can use. Just really scrape them down, use a ball of aluminum foil to get all the crud off, then burn it off and get to grilling. There's always a way around it, but in the sense of what I believe you're asking, you kind of want to have one or the other. Hope that helps. This next question comes from JMC Dids. I hope I got that right. I may start having you guys put your name in the questions too, a little bit easier than tags. But he asks, how do you stop your sauce from hardening when you're coating it on the ribs? Is the sauce too sugary? So it sounds as though what you're getting into is you're basically getting with a hard block of just, something concentrated when you're trying to baste your ribs or baste your proteins as you're cooking. Yes, it can definitely be too much sugar, but it could also be not enough liquid. You want to start with a base of something almost to the consistency of maple syrup, that even if it sits, it's never going to harden like that, and keep it warm as you're going. Add additional things to it. Make a nice broth, make a nice stock, perhaps add some additional acidity such as fresh squeezed lemon juices in there. There's numerous things you can do to loosen up that sauce, but you want to definitely take notes. I would strongly suggest, as you're trying to create your sauce, either take notes of the measurements or weigh everything before you start your cook and creation, then weigh everything after. That way you know exactly how much of what you used, and you can really start fine-tuning the details there. It is very tricky with sauce creations. You don't want it to let's see, what's the right word here? Well, you just don't want it too thin, and you don't want it too hard like a rock, like what you're coming out with. You've got to find the right viscosity, that sweet spot in the middle. Just start slow, melt down everything, and try not to add additional ingredients in until the first ingredient you've added is completely broken down and melted in. Maybe you're using something soluble like granulated sugar. Try shifting to brown sugar, that you'll definitely be able to see it add to the consistency, add that sweetness, and add that viscosity that we're looking for to basically coat the back of a spoon without being too thin. If it ends up too thin, you're dealing with more of a mop sauce that you're going to keep applying throughout the entire cook versus a finishing sauce that I think that's what you're looking for. But if not, if I'm way off base, just shoot me an email over at thisweekinbarbecue@gmail.com and we'll get it sorted out together. I really like this next question from Franco Titans. He asks, is there a right or wrong way to barbecue, or if you end up with a good product, does it matter? I think that's a wonderful question, and that's the right mindset to have. There are so many brands, there's so many types of smokers for a reason. You've got your kettle style, you've got your ceramic style, you've got your offset, you've got your propane, you've got your vertical, you've got your wood burn. There's so many for a reason, because there's so many ways to get to the same end goal, which is just a very delicious bite of food. Why do you think roads have so many different access points? Multiple ways to get to the exact same place. So to answer your question, I don't think there's a right or wrong way. There are better ways that are a little bit more efficient, but then there are others that may be a little bit more cumbersome and take longer times, but it doesn't make them right or wrong. Whatever your niche is, whatever works for you, as long as you and those around you are enjoying the end result, that is all that matters. Have fun with barbecue. Stop trying to be the best X of whatever or this or that. Just be the best you and enjoy it. Put out a product that you're proud of, no matter what you're using to cook it with. Next, we've got a question from Joe Stevens 190. He's asking, how do I set up my Masterbuilt, which I've got a Masterbuilt Gravity Series 1050. How do I set that up for longer cooks? Well, that's a really good question, Joe. You mentioned in your question too, adding chunks. Now, I personally use wood splits. I split them in half and then half again, so basically quarters, and then I place them in the four corners of my hopper. Then I load it with charcoal. I make sure I have them vertical. So what's happening is the bottoms of my splits are catching fire and slowly burning along with my charcoal, adding that real fresh wood flavor, that extra taste, that extra kick. I love using this method. My buddy John, he actually does what he calls double stacking, which is what you mentioned. He'll put a layer of charcoal, then layer of chunks, layer of charcoal, layer of chunks, and he cooks down that way. It's a perfect way to add additional flavor throughout those longer cooks. I do like my method though, because whether you're doing a long cook or a short cook, because the splits are vertical, you're always going to get that additional flavor no matter how fast the cook is. But like I said, it's all up to you. Whichever route works best for you, just play around with it and see. But I appreciate the question. It's a good one. I really like this question. This one comes from The Real Chef Chambers. He asks, sometimes I have a hard time stabilizing my temperatures in a smaller offset. Do I have any tips? Yes. Yes, I do. There's certain things I do to all my rigs. And when I say all my rigs, I mean all my rigs. No matter who built them, who designed them, certain things I do across the board to help me along the way in the cook. So if you've got a smaller rig, you're going to have to focus on managing a much smaller fire because your firebox doesn't have enough room for that heat to travel. So it's just shooting up and that temperature spiking. All my rigs have huge, large fireboxes on them, so I can move that around. So how do you address that in a fixed size firebox? Set yourself up to where you don't need as much fuel to run your rig, because that's really going to help. What I do is I go to the Home Depot and I get expanded sheet metal, right? I cut out a piece a little bit smaller than the firebox area that I have in my rig, and I put that down, and I usually cut two so that they crosshatch one another. When I do that, it catches the smallest embers, right? And the ash falls through, but those embers that are still have coals, that still have heat to them, that still putting out power, they are going to stay right there and keep that heat going, so I don't have to keep chucking on a ton of huge pieces of splits. I can just do a quarter split here, and those embers are going to keep it rolling and keep that temperature going. That's one of the tricks I do. I also take fire bricks. You'll typically see these in certain restaurants that have a Santa Maria style setup. It's just a way to protect everything and retain heat. But I'll get some fire bricks from the Home Depot and line the walls of my firebox along with the belly of my smoker as well to help retain heat. This trick comes in handy like you wouldn't believe if you live in colder climates. Trust me on this one. Hardest cook I had to do was in Denver in 17 degrees, way up in the mountains. I was very happy to be able to pull this off, but I hope these tips help you out, brother. And if you need a little bit more information, feel free to reach out or submit some more questions during the next Q&A. This is a good one. I think everyone sort of had this frustration. I definitely know everyone had this frustration. Sean Dolan asks, he has a very difficult time getting the membrane off of his ribs. Are there any tips? Sean, we have all been there. There's the classic method of just trying to fight it off, but here are two routes that I use, and I really hope it helps. Just need a butter knife. Need a butter knife and lay your ribs down flat. Slide a little bit of that butter knife right in the middle of the ribs there, right on that membrane, and then lift the ribs so that it goes from this to this. You'll automatically see that knife sort of poke up there, and you'll be able to lift from the middle to get that membrane off. Now, if this method is rough for you, you can always go to the second or third bone on the medius side of your rib and slide a butter knife under the membrane and sort of wiggle all the way up. Then grab a paper towel or a cloth, grab that little extra membrane, you lift it up and slowly peel away, one motion. Those are the ways that I peel my ribs, and it is just one of those things that is a funny barbecue lost art, just like trimming brisket. It's a pain, but it has to be done. It's part of the whole process. Got to get those membranes off before the cook. This question actually ties back to American Barbecue Showdown. Rhonda asked me, how much did I enjoy being on the show and who was my favorite competitor? They were all my favorite. I have an amazing memory and moments shared with each and every single one of them. So if it's something as far as me having s'mores with Miss Tina by the fire in the final episode, all the way to listening to Port Wright belt out amazing tunes, they were all my favorite, and just share just a special moment with them all. So it's borderline impossible to pick just one. In regards to enjoying my time on the show, it was absolutely amazing. I felt like Charlie in I felt like Charlie, and the show was the Chocolate Factory. There was everything you can imagine, every spice, every rub, every knife, every type of cutting board, plating vessel, even the really tiny whisk. You never know what I would use that for, but it was just great to see him there. The overall experience was hands down amazing and something I will cherish for the rest of my life. And I just wish that everyone else that was in the barbecue world could experience it just like I did. And to wrap up this week's Q&A, I've got a question from Ellis. He asked, if I were to cook one thing for the rest of my life, nonstop, what would it be? And I would have to say chicken, because it takes flavor so well. There's 1,000,001 ways to do it. Roast it, bake it, smoke it, grill it. It just keeps going on and on and on. And because it captures flavor so well, I could play with various profiles. One of my favorite things to do is actually buy chickens whole, and I will split them down the middle, spatchcock, then split again, and I'll put 2 different types of seasoning and rubs on them while cooking them the exact same way, just to see how they taste, just to see what different characters come out. It's a great habit. It's a great way to practice your grilling skills. But if that's one of the dishes I would pick, like if I had to have to choose one thing to cook, it's definitely going to be chicken. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of This Week in Barbecue. I truly appreciate it. Once again, I'm your host, Rashid Phillips. And if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell 2 friends. I'm put a lot into this, and I really hope you guys enjoy it as much as I do, because it's very much a learning experience for me, just seeing everything that's going on in the world of barbecue around us. So make sure to tune in next week for This Week in Barbecue, where news has never tasted so good. Take care.